Welcome to Connecting Chats. Today we're going to be talking with Portuguese pianist Filipe Souza. Filipe is going to be talking to us about his experiences as a workshop leader all around the world. Enjoy! Grande Filipe Souza, welcome to Connecting Chats. We're live right now, my friends.
Hello, Fernando Machado. Nice to speak to you again.
Tell us where you are to start off. Where are you?
I am very lucky to be in a beautiful place in Portugal, in the middle of nowhere, pretty much, in Alentejo, and enjoying a day of sun in the end of November, which for me is something that hasn't happened in a long time living in London. Uh, yeah, so I'm very lucky right now in that regard.
That's cool, man. Well, welcome to Connecting Chats. We're going to be talking about your experiences as a workshop leader, as a pianist, as a community musician, and all this creative work you do. But to start off in Connecting Chats, we go a little bit back in time and talk a little about your background. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into music as a child, and how and how things progress.
Yeah. My first musical contact was really with my granddad, who played Portuguese guitar, and he was blind. So at that time, it was very hard to get work, and my grandmother was just taking care of the the kids in the family. So um, they were quite poor in that time. This was a dictatorship in Portugal. Um, and so he played in the metro. So I remember still going with my mum to visit him and kind of trick him, stopping his strings, and he was like
Amazing.
startled.
Is that your
And
mom's dad?
that was my mom's dad, yes,
All right.
and counting the coins with him. So I remember all that. So that was my first, um, I think, very young contact with music. And also, my uncle had a pop rock band in the 60s, a little bit like on in the back of Beatles. And there was another band here that was the Shadows. They were in English and they sang in Portuguese. So
Ah,
apparently
nice.
it was quite famous then. But I'm mentioning my uncle because I used to go to his house after school and stay there for a few hours, and he had all these keyboards, and that's how I started really playing something out of interest of, I don't know, the keys, and that was what I was drawn to. And my parents were had the foresight to put me in a music conservatoire, and that's how the journey of music started.
Amazing. Like your formal music education started then. And did you play classical music then in the
That
conservatoire?
that was my classical period, and which was very long actually, because I was there from 10 to 23 doing all sorts of classical music. They did singing. I did a lot of choir singing,
Nice.
and piano. Um, and then at the same time, though, towards the end of that process, because I wasn't quite sure I wanted to do, I followed another passion, which was architecture. So I was doing that, and I was finishing architecture at the same time as I finished the conservatoire there. Um, and then I had a pause. I was a little bit disenchanted with the music world of that I was shown, the classical music world, and I thought there wasn't a space for me. And I wasn't lucky to find people who could have shown me that at that time, but also I didn't look for it very much. So I became an architect for 2 years. I was just did that, but feeling that I was missing music.
Yeah, it's
A lot.
amazing. It's amazing because in Brazil in the 50s, there was this wave of musicians that came from architecture as well because of Niemeyer, the big, like the
Yes.
big architect guy in Brazil. So Tom Jobim and Chico Buarque, and they were all architects,
Yeah.
and then became musicians. So it's very nice.
There's loads here in Portugal. It's
All
amazing.
right.
Once I started discovering, I was, oh, you went to school with me. You're a musician now as well. Okay, great. Yeah, it's very connected, and another experience that adds. It was a great course to. It was great 7 years of my life
Yeah.
to explore this world of, and it ties in totally with creating music and the creative process.
Yeah, sorry, but I interrupted you. Were you saying that then, yeah, after, so you were a bit feeling a bit down about the music where you're playing and a bit unsure, and then what happened then?
Well, then this is then there was a big turning point. So I at that time I was a bit down. I was quite down. I was quite depressed, I think, and I knew that I wasn't happy with what my life was, and I remember writing down what were the things that I was missing, and I also did capoeira for many years, the Brazilian martial arts. So, and that was my first contact with really with community and underprivileged communities around Lisbon,
Oh yeah,
and doing not workshops, but like we would go to the poorest neighborhoods and do our rodas there, and I made a lot of friends in capoeira. I was there for 11 years. I started teaching it as well. And of course, capoeira has a big musical side to it, so I was very drawn to it. At the time, I was ready to drop it though, to leave capoeira because of other reasons, and I was a little bit tired of some things about it. But one thing that was important was this contact with what I called at the time real people, with
yeah,
the with with the society, with the community that maybe wasn't the one I grew up so much with, actually, because maybe I think I was quite privileged to be able to. I went to state schools, but you know, I think I was like many of my friends in Lisbon, a middle class um, community that didn't see so much of this side, which capoeira showed me. So that was there in the background, and I knew that I missed that,
yeah,
and I knew that I missed making music, but making my own, and never had really. I didn't have bands, or because maybe piano is a bit of a isolated instrument and like reclusive to your home. And when my friends were playing football, I would be practicing, um, and maybe because of that, or because I didn't look for it, I didn't have that side through music. But I found, whilst I was in my architecture office, I saw this program note for a course in Casa de Música, which is a venue in Porto, which is animator, musical animator, community musician course for a year, and the description just hit every point that I like had written a couple of months before that I was missing in my life, and it's
oh,
like,
so it's kind of a training course rather than a than
yeah,
like you were not attending as a practitioner, like as a participant. You were, it's like a training thing.
it was a training aimed at young professionals,
Yeah,
musicians,
amazing. Right.
uh, and teachers,
Yeah,
and it was just so strong, that connection with those words, that I had to figure it out. I had to apply, and I traveled there, and I did the audition, which is a very different audition than I was used to. And the audition was with Tim Steiner and Sam Mason, were the teachers of the course. Uh, and that became that space, that moment was a real click that I didn't have before in my life. It was like it was really, this is what I want to be doing in the moment. It was, I never had that with anything else. And then I did the course, and the course was amazing. We had lots of great experiences. We worked with different groups. We brought things together, and that's where I met Tim Steiner, who became a mentor, and Paul Griffiths as well, both from the Guildhall. So that was the connection to then to London, to the masters that we did together, and then
Yeah.
that opened a whole new world. And but really, from the moment I started doing that course, I think 3 months later I quit my job as an architect. I stayed in Lisbon doing a bit more music. I went to teach again music and did a little bit of jazz training, and then I went to London to do the masters.
Amazing. And then the new journey started there. I know you're very passionate about transient and journeys and pathways and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, that sounds very cool. And I was curious, like when you were talking about the capoeira thing, like did you actually end up? You said you taught some capoeira. Was it? It's amazing. Like that experience probably brought a lot of things to you, like to have like a kind of body language and all this kind of like teaching with your body, right? Because it was as a but with music at the same time. I'm sure that brought a lot of different experience for a classical pianist
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
in terms of interacting with
On the other side, and I remember even my piano teacher saying, "You shouldn't be doing this. It's not good for your wrists." Uh,
yeah.
it was really like two worlds. I mean, but I always liked that. I always liked to explore. I always had different groups of people, and I always hopped from one to the other, and I liked to be in situations that were different and out of my comfort zone. And those two worlds were really kind of beautifully uh,
Different.
opposite.
Opposite.
Yeah.
And then like from the leadership course, like you started doing hundreds and hundreds of different projects. And can you kind of give us a little bit of an overview of projects and kind of things that you mainly do? And I know it's been 12 years now
Mhm.
since you've been working in this field, so it's kind of hard, but kind of an overview of the kind of projects you've been involved with.
Yeah, it really changes, doesn't it, in
Once
waves.
upon a time, once upon a time.
No, I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna give you all the list. That's
No, yeah,
too
please.
boring. But I think it changes, and I think I always valued a good balance in between the artistic practice and the artistic practice with others, which where I include community music making, um, collaborations. Um, so I kind of include everything in the same, but I like variations of that theme. So something like that.
Yeah,
They're all the same for me, but or at least I go into a project with that state of mind of okay, so this is this we're making something, and these are the people I'm working with now,
yeah,
and this is the space, and anything can happen, and it's beautiful. But I mean, the it has ranged depending on the different years. It's changed. I did a lot of work with choreographers and dancers at one period. In terms of the workshop leading, I did. I worked a lot with youth orchestras and uh, young children in schools, basically.
yeah,
I did a lot of that, and the only thing I kept regularly was working actually in East London with a state school of a majority of Bengali children that with whom I created a really special relationship till today. Um, so I've never left that one day of teaching until now.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah,
From Portugal.
yeah. For a moment, for this year, who
Yeah,
knows? Um, so working with children a lot, working with youth orchestra, kind of young musicians coming from the classical world,
yeah.
but exploring the new ways of creating and engaging with each other and playing and performing.
Can you tell us a little bit about how, like, what kind of processes do you go with? And you don't need to be, of course, detailed about each process, but kind of what are your aims? And when you start a project, like, do like the idea, I'm assuming here that generally is creating new music, right? That's the, if you need to, put it into one
Yeah,
phrase, is
yeah.
making new music. And how, like, how do you get there? And can you give us, like, some kind of scenarios?
Hmm. Oh, well, one thing I don't have is a recipe, and it's funny because uh,
You're not
I
the
don't
first
really
one to
like
say this
recipes.
in this connecting chat. Like, there's always, this is a very common thing we go back to. This is great.
That's good. Well, I
But
don't even cooking. I don't really like recipes very much. Um, because the kitchen changes and the ingredients change, and that's really interesting to see. I've noticed that I moved the houses a lot in London, and I moved obviously from Portugal to London and then back here. And there's always a period when you're in a new house cooking where everything goes wrong. The things that oh, this is my signature mushroom risotto. I'm gonna no, but then the coconut milk is different. I use coconut milk for the
uh,
mushroom risotto.
in a different
Or
cupboard.
yeah, the fire is different. The pots are different, and it changes. And I think I never did this comparison before, but I like doing food comparisons. It's something that actually in workshops works a lot. Um, it's the first thing everyone thinks about when you ask something that you like, something that you don't like. Especially with children, they often go to food,
It's
isn't
true,
it?
yeah.
Um, I think this is the thing. When you approach a new project, you can have for me, I like to have a general idea of yeah what the aims are and where I want to get to. I want to make something new. I want everyone to be involved in making that something new. I want to be there as a enabler and a facilitator um, that has maybe a little bit more experience on how you put things together, but mostly more trust in and confidence in the process of how these things work. So giving, um, you know, um, allowing for allowing a space for things to be experimented with and in a positive way, and but also like driving it in the moments where it needs to be driven, but basically without a recipe. But basically with sometimes I go into a new situation, and I honestly feel this most of the times. Is I feel like, what am I doing here? I can't do this. It's the same when I'm performing. I'm a fraud.
Yeah.
I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. Um, and of course, as soon as the thing starts and you get
Yeah.
everyone into a circle and it goes, and then once the machine starts moving, and we kind of get those, we have those skills to those tools to make the machine start going, then you don't need to do much. You just
Mm,
need to pay attention, really
yeah.
listen and pay attention to what's going on. Listen to where the ideas are coming from, to what the group dynamic is, and where you need to push and where you need to um, I love that. I mean, I really miss that now in these times. That group dynamic,
Yeah.
that playfulness of being in a
Yeah.
group that with this its challenges as well. And yeah, it's good actually to step back and think about these things.
And miss it, right? And feel like, oh, I miss it.
Yeah.
uh, um, very cool. I love the idea with the food and like when you move houses and everything changes. So another thing that we talked about when preparing for today is that the fact that you um, we did it at the Guildhall, but also you carried on a little bit more doing leading workshops all around the world, and in you know and I know that with you as well that we have to learn a whole new language not only to live our life but also to work in a different language. You need to learn all the all the language for work language. I don't know. I'm losing my
Yeah,
language right now, but
technical.
the technical stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
and I was curious to hear your experiences in places like China and
Yeah.
like and of course we worked in Singapore together, but like everybody spoke English there or Singlish that they say, right?
Well, that was an interesting one, wasn't it? I mean, we all found that after the first day, after when we were asking, should we do it like this, and they would say yes, or should we do it like this, and they would say yes,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you're like,
So
okay,
there's
so
there's more there's more than just the language, right? There's the polite way of talking and the relationship between teacher and student in each country changes a lot. And then
yeah,
you I remember we going there, in Singapore with like shorts and like you know t-shirts and everything. Everything changes. So I would like you to kind of talk a little bit about that and explore a little bit of that theme and tell us a little some stories of how you learn on the job on this communication issues
well,
or that,
yeah,
yeah or
well, with the
maybe I
languages,
was going to say barriers, but sometimes it's actually bridges, right? And sometimes it's not actually barriers. And
yeah, totally. I don't think they're barriers at all. I
yeah,
think I've learned a lot from them, and yeah, we create the barriers.
yeah,
Um,
exactly, before we get there, right?
yeah, I well, it's funny that when I'm here now and I'm having like to talk about music in a couple of projects that I'm doing, and I'm struggling. I've, I forgot my own language, um, and that's interesting when you're doing it. Obviously, when you're talking about things more in conversation or meetings or in planning stages, I'm finding that.
Yeah,
In leading, I remember actually in your city, in São Paulo, or around there, in Jundiaí,
yeah.
um, working with Guri, um, it was really funny because I was
You were speaking the same language.
I was speaking the same language. However, I often either forgot how to say certain things in Portuguese, or I was speaking too fast so they wouldn't understand, or I would be speaking for about 3 minutes in English without noticing, and no one would say anything until a teacher would like raise their hands. You speaking English? Because I just didn't notice. It's really interesting how you do that. But mostly, I find, I mean, like we did then in Singapore, that you have to just rethink how you engage in these situations. And actually, you find that you don't need to speak as much as you think you did. So it's
Mm.
actually a good exercise to do is not to try and lead, and I do that often. as much as possible without speaking, or with speaking minimum, because obviously music is a language of its own,
Yeah,
and you can communicate with that even with someone who hasn't had much contact with it, because we're born with it. And then we have body language, and we have
yeah.
gestures, and international sounds, and that cross barriers. So that's the main thing for me. Is like when I go into these settings, I really have to not do what we're doing here. We can't be. I can't be talking too much, explaining. So we're gonna do this and that. No, we go straight and we start.
Yeah,
So can you copy me? Or I say one thing, or I usually try to learn how to say hello, good morning,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
left, right, uh, stop,
Up and
uh,
down, high and
loud.
low.
But you don't really need, because then you introduce
Yeah,
your language, your gestures, and that becomes your new language. And I use that a lot. I use gestures and signs a lot, which help then to start using your own communication.
that's amazing. And that's cool, Philippe. Yeah, I think this is a lot. I think we can go to our
I'm talking
uh,
too much.
no, no, no. I'm just looking at the time.
Yeah.
But I think we can go to our feel free moment of connecting chats here, and
Of
is
course,
inspired
Fernando
by
can have a feel-free moment.
and is all inspired by our trip to Gambia, where the
Yeah.
guys used to say feel free and feel free, and I would like you to say to you feel free here, Filipe Souza, a Portuguese pianist, workshop leader, composer, and say whatever you want, be in silence, complain about coronavirus, um, talk about your beautiful country, anything you like to say, tips for young musicians, advice for workshop leaders. Um, Feel free.
Mm, that's quite a big task. I want to do all of them. Well, suddenly everything is quiet here, but this is really beautiful sound with the birds here. Well, I think as in Gambia, I'm finding here, and I've been thinking a lot about listening and deep listening. Um, I think that's it's not an advice, but it's something I wish more people did. And I encourage people to try and do more often, to stop and have a moment and to listen more.
Amazing. I think that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I'm going to do some of that today, I have to say. I'm needing a bit of that. Felipe Souza, thank you so much, man. It's always a
Thank you.
pleasure. Always a pleasure to hear you talking. And I haven't we haven't spoken for a while in person or in this setting, and it's always very nice to see how passionate you are about workshop leading and making music and creating new stuff. It's amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernando. It's really nice to speak to you again.
Falou então. Bye bye.
Ciao.